Now I'll show you how to make this basket bucket bag. These are the front and back leather for the bag body. Next, we'll start by sewing the front and back panels together. To do this, we'll need this edge binding leather piece. Note that the center section of the binding leather doesn't have any holes. Align the first holes on both ends. Then fold it down and pull it straight. You'll notice that one side is longer than the other. Once aligned, so the longer side on the outside and the shorter side on the inside, it should look like this. Measure out a length of thread that's 4 times the length of the seam. This is the length of the seam. Take 4 times that length. Now let's thread needles. Pass the waxed thread through the eye of the needle. Then use the needle tip to pierce through the center of the thread. Pull the main thread tight to lock it. This creates a short tail, but it ensures the thread won't slip off while you're sewing. One thread has 2 ends. Thread a needle onto each end. Let's thread the second needle. Once through the eye, pierce the center of the thread again and pull it tight. Now our double needles are ready. Before we start sewing this part, locate these 2 hardware components from your kit. Let's slide these 2 hardware pieces in first. We'll sew the first stitch like this. Pass one of the needles through first. Pull both needles together to center the thread. This ensures the thread length is perfectly equal on both sides. This is how we complete the first stitch. Find the longer side of the binding leather and place it on the outside. Sew this side first and put the other side aside for a moment. From the second stitch, we'll join it with the left side of the bag body. The needle needs to go through the binding leather first, then pass through the side gusset leather, and finally through the binding leather on the back. Push the needle through. That's our second stitch. Now pull the needle from the bottom, the one on the right, upward. Give the thread a little pull to tighten it. Similarly, pull the bottom needle upward. Make sure it goes through all 3 layers of leather. Then push the top needle back down. Keep pulling the bottom needle up and the top needle down. Repeat this same sewing motion. Pull the bottom needle up and the top needle down. To put it simply, we are passing both needles through the same hole from opposite sides. This creates a very clean and beautiful stitch line. Since there are 3 layers of leather, take your time. Bottom needle up, top needle down. Follow the holes and continue all the way to the end. Sew it right to this point. We've reached the end of the seam. Now that we're here, we've finished the row of holes. Now it's time to finish the seam. Backstitch for 2 or 3 holes. Then push this final needle through. After backstitching a few times, snip the thread with your scissors. Leave a thread tail of less than 1 centimeter. We need to use a lighter to singe and melt the thread end. Since this is waxed thread, it will naturally melt when heated. Press it down gently, and that finishes the thread end. Now that this side is done, let's grab the other piece of bag body leather. Place it in like this. Let's measure the thread we need. Again, measure 4 times the length of the holes. Next, we'll thread the needles. One thread has 2 ends. Put a needle on each end. Start with the first hole. The process for the first stitch is exactly what we did before. Align the top first hole with the bottom first hole. Pass the needle through the first hole. Then, pull both needles together to equalize the thread length. On the second stitch, start including the bag body leather. You're threading through the first hole of the main body leather. Keep the holes aligned. You can use a clip at the end to hold it in place. The sewing method for this side is identical to the other. Now, we've reached the end of the row. Start finishing the seam by backstitching for 2 or 3 holes. Backstitch for 2 or 3 holes, then snip the thread on the inside. Singe the thread end with a lighter. The other edge of the bag is sewn exactly like the side we just finished. The technique is the same. When sewing this side, first find this leather piece from your materials kit. Once you have the piece, slide it into the hardware. Once that's set, we'll sew the binding to these 2 leather pieces. The sewing method is exactly the same as before, so I won't repeat the demonstration here. Next, we also need to sew these 2 sides together. The holes are already pre-punched. You just need to measure a thread that's 4 times the length of the holes. For the first stitch, start by passing your needle through the first hole of both layers. Once through, pull both needles together to equalize the thread. This ensures the thread length is perfectly even on both sides. From here, we'll use a standard saddle stitch. Pass the back needle through to the front, and then pass the front needle through to the back. Both needles should cross through the same hole. Pull the thread a bit firm to tighten the stitch. Keep moving the back needle to the front and the front needle to the back. Back needle to the front and front needle to the back. Repeat this same motion. Just follow the preset holes to continue sewing. Sew all the way around the edge of the leather. You'll reach the end of the row very quickly. Once you're at the end, backstitch for 2 or 3 holes. This will secure and finish the seam. Snip the thread with your scissors. Use a lighter to singe and press the thread end flat. These 2 square pieces are for the bottom of the bag. One of them has for anti-wear studs, which go on the outside. The other bottom piece is a baseboard that goes inside the bag once it's finished. So we can set the baseboard aside for now. Let's start by sewing the piece with the studs. Measure the total length of the holes around the bag bottom. Again, measure a thread that is 4 times this length. That's twice the length. Three times and 4 times. Start threading your needles. Follow the same process for the second needle. Even though the thread is long, we'll continue using a saddle stitch. Looking at the holes on the bottom, you'll notice a large hole in the center. There are 2 small holes next to it, and then another large hole. It's the same on the other side. Large hole, small hole, and then another large hole. These larger holes are all centering or alignment marks. Look for the set of 1 large, 2 small, and 1 large hole. This is your symmetrical starting point. Where does this line up? It corresponds with this group of 4 holes on the other leather piece. The larger holes match the ones on the ends, and the small holes match the 2 in the middle. Now align both pieces of leather together. Place the black sides together, leaving the blue side facing out. Let's start sewing. Begin at the first large alignment hole. The holes will line up right along this seam we've already prepared. Start your first stitch here. Pull the thread through. Pull both needles together to center it. This section of sewing will be quite long. Next, pull the bottom needle through to the top. Then pass the top needle through to the bottom. This is our standard saddle stitch method. Move to the third hole and repeat. Top needle down. Bottom needle up. And top needle down again. Pull the stitch snug. That finishes the first 4 holes. Now, continue following the pre-punched holes, all along the 4 edges of the bag bottom. Keep sewing forward along the bottom holes. Maintain your steady pace. When you get to this spot, there is another large alignment hole. It should match up perfectly with the seam above it. This tells you that your alignment is correct, and you haven't missed any stitches. The needle should fit right into this large positioning hole. This confirms that everything is still perfectly aligned. You haven't skipped anything. If the large holes on both layers don't line up, it means a hole was likely skipped earlier. As long as you go stitch by stitch, you should be fine. Let's keep sewing. Pass the top needle down and directly up through the next hole. This lets you sew through 2 holes at once. It's definitely faster to sew 2 at a time, but sewing 1 by 1 usually looks a bit neater. Let's continue forward. When we reach this point, backstitch for 2 holes. This completes the end of the seam. Cut the thread with your scissors. Finish the end by singeing it with your lighter. The bag bottom is now complete. Next, let's prepare the leather pieces for the handles. There are 4 handle pieces in total. We'll use them in pairs, layered together. Then, we will sandwich the main body leather between them. We'll sew them together once the main body is sandwiched in place. This way, the main body piece sits right in the middle of the handle layers, just like this. Now, let's measure thread. The total length should be about 7 times the length of the handle. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The thread for the handles may be quite long. Let's thread the needles. All right, let's start the first stitch from one side. First, locate the center alignment hole at the very bottom. Start from the center hole of this oval decorative leather piece. Pass the needle upward. Again, pull both needles together to center the thread. This ensures the thread length is perfectly equal on both needles. Now move to the next hole. Bottom needle up, top needle down. Next, pull the thread tight. Keep going, pulling the bottom needle through to the top. Both needles pass through the same hole. Then, pass the top needle back down. If you want to speed things up, don't pull the thread tight immediately. Pass it through the next hole first. Pass the top needle through, then come back up through the next hole. This allows you to pull the thread tight every 2 holes. Continue forward along these holes. Keep stitching along the row. Pay close attention when you get to this part. Here, you need to sandwich the main body leather between the 2 handle pieces. Sew them all together as one piece. At this point, you'll be stitching through 3 layers of leather. This securely attaches the handle to the bag body. Continue forward along the holes. We're almost at the end of this side. All the holes for this section are now finished. Now, backstitch for 2 or 3 holes to finish the seam. Once you reach the end, snip the thread with your scissors. Use a lighter to singe the remaining thread end. The sewing method for this side is exactly the same as the other. I won't repeat the demonstration. Once both handles are sewn, pass this leather strap through like this. Now we're ready to install the key accessory. Take this small leather strip and pass the smaller end through the key ring. Then, pass the larger end through the small slot. Now the key is attached. Next, pull the strap through the hole in this small leather piece. Let's start sewing. Start your stitch from the second hole. Hold the thread tail with your finger and backstitch to the first hole. When you reach the end, stitch back again. Once back at the starting point, backstitch for 2 more holes. Finally, pass the needle forward one last time. Snip the thread with scissors. Singe the thread end. The sewing method for the other side is exactly the same. Done. The key is now successfully hidden inside the decorative piece. When you need to use the key, just pull it out. Just like this. It's ready to use once pulled out. Usually, you can just tuck it back inside the leather. The bag is now fully sewn. Unlock it. Hang the lock onto the bag. When you need to open the bag, simply use the key to unlock it. Now let me show you how to tie the silk scarf bow. Thread the silk scarf through and tie a basic knot first. Once the knot is tied, fold the right side of the scarf. Wrap the left side around the right fold. And pull it through from underneath to form a loop. Finally, give the shape a little adjustment. And there you have it, our bow is finished.